Okay, dear hearts. Happy Saturday. It's Lorinda. I hope you're doing well. We're on week 9 of Bible Day Live, and this week has been really good. And I hope I can show you some of the great things, some of the interesting things, anyway, that I've come across. So, the thing I'm going to do now is we're just going to get the screen share ready, and we will get going. Now, one of the interesting things we're going to talk about this week is um, Balak and Balaam. We were in Numbers, and that is one of the things that we will talk about, this Balak and Balaam. So, as usual, you can follow along. It doesn't really matter which version of the Bible you use. I'm really just happy to go through the Word every year, just to remind us and see what is shown to us um, every time we go through it. So I will go ahead and get started here. All right. So our big picture we're still in the midst of the Exodus period. The children of Israel are still in the wilderness. And so that's where we are. Now, this is something interesting I found. Um, I wanted to update this chart. Eventually, I will redo this chart. But Perez, we know Judah was one of the sons of Jacob, and Perez was his son. Judah left home and he went in and married and had this um, and had some sons. And Perez was actually a twin son that was had with his daughter-in-law Tamar. Now we remember that story in Genesis 38, which was a pretty wild story, right? That Judah's sons married, um, and they were not righteous, and so they were both killed. And so Tamar was left without a husband, and according to custom, the son, the brother of a the brother of another brother that had passed away, was supposed to sleep with his widow wife so that he would not be left without any children. Well, that guy didn't want to do that, and so Tamar was his wife, expecting Judah, her father-in-law, to give her another one of his sons, after two of them had died already, and she didn't get that, and so she played the harlot, and she went and slept in disguise with Judah, and Perez is the son that came out of that union. Okay, let me make sure I can. Yeah, okay, so the audio is doing good. Perez was the son that came out of that union, and he was actually a twin of Zerah, and that is in Genesis 38:29. And you can see the other son here of Perez, Hezron. You can see that in First Chronicles 2 and 5. We haven't gotten there yet. And I put in some of the other verses where these two were born. So that is what I wanted to point out there. Okay. So as we move forward, I wanted to make note that we have to be mindful of the different spellings in the different translations, because we have to keep in mind that what is happening here is the Bible has gone through many iterations, from generations to to different languages and different people and different spellings of things. So we want to be able to lean on scholars that have come before us and kind of put these things together for us. That's one of the reasons why I really like the logo software, because it helps you bring all of that stuff together and you get a really good picture. So let me give you some examples of what I mean here. So, like in the Old Testament, Perez is spelled this way in Genesis 38, but in Genesis 38, in the New Living Translation, it's spelled this way. This is the King James Version spelling. This is the New Living Translation spelling. When you look at the King James Version spelling of Zerah, which was Perez's twin brother, it's spelled this way, and then in the New Living Translation, it's spelled exactly the same way. Okay, so we remember that Perez and Zerah were twin boys born to Tamar and Judah, and Tamar was Judah's daughter-in-law. Okay, so in the New Testament, you see totally different spellings: Phares and Zara, and we see different spellings for Tamar as well. Thamar versus Tamar, and Judas versus Judah, and that's in Matthew 1:3. See how Judah is spelled here? Is spelled with a like Judas, like the Judas that we know about. And then this is Perez, Zerah. So but that's Matthew 1:13. And we know that Matthew gives a really detailed genealogy of Jesus, starting from Abraham and going on to the birth of Jesus. So we have to, even these names are spelled differently. They're spelled differently than, see how this one here is Ram, but here is Aram. And this one Ezram, but here Hezron, right? So we have to be mindful of that. And all these men and women that have dedicated their lives to studying scripture, we have like this huge library and repositories of their work that we can lean on, so we don't have to do that work over. We can just benefit from it. Okay, so the children of Israel are, remember, they were at Kadesh Barnea. They were afraid to go into the promised land. They sent the spies. Only Caleb and Joshua came back saying, we can take them on. Everybody else complaining, not wanting to go and take the land. So they kind of turn around and they go to Mount Hor, and this is where Aaron dies, and they go back towards Edom. You remember last week we talked about their cousins in Edom, were like, no, you can't pass through here. So they go around Edom and they're heading to Moab, right? Water was a constant issue for them in the desert. So this is the journey that they had to take. It was a constant issue. So they were backtracking, conquering, and complaining. We'll talk about the conquering next. So one of the things that in Numbers 21, when it talks about the victory over the Canaanites, now remember, they had just left here defeated, not trusting the Lord to give them the land that he had promised. So now they have to turn around and go back. How many times have we gotten to a place and we were almost there, but we ended up having to actually go back and just retreat and just go backwards? Sometimes you have to take two steps backwards to go forward. But so here they are here. So this is a different map. So this place right here, Kadesh Barnea, is the same place as here, right? This place right here, Kadesh Barnea, is the same place here, right here. It's just a different map. So after they left there, in Numbers 21:1, it says, the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev. Now, this is Arad right here. And sometimes the king doesn't always live in the city that he's the king of. So this whole region here is the Negev. So when it's Numbers 21:1, when it's saying the king of Arad who lived in the Negev. So the Negev is an area, not really a city. He heard that the Israelites were approaching on the road through Atharim. So this Atharim place is on this. I don't think you can see it on this map, but he heard they were coming. So he attacked the Israelites and took some of them as prisoners. Then the people of Israel made this vow to the Lord: if you will hand these people over to us, we will completely destroy them. Now, we have to think about their mindset at this point. I'm thinking, okay, we just got to the edge of the promised land. We were too afraid to go in because there were giants there. There were the people, their city was fortified, and we just didn't believe that God was going to be with us. After all he's done, we just couldn't get that faith together to go in there. And so now they come to another adversary, and they promise God, Lord, if you will put them, if you would give them to us this victory, we will destroy them. So they've gotten courage because now, they were defeated. And they're probably thinking, we've got to trust the Lord, or we're going to be out here in this desert for a very, very long time. Of course, we all know that they were. So we will completely destroy all their towns. They made a vow to the Lord: if you will hand these people over to us, we will completely destroy all their towns. The Lord heard the Israelites' request and gave them victory over the Canaanites. Now, that's not all of the Canaanites. That's just the Canaanites that this king was over. The Israelites completely destroyed them and their towns, and the place has been called Hormah ever since. Now, this is on this map where they're thinking Hormah is. So they traveled from here up to here, Hormah, and this is where they destroyed this town. Now, there's an asterisk right here beside the word destroy. And that asterisk says the Hebrew term here refers to the complete consecration of things or people to the Lord, either by destroying them or by giving them as an offering. And we know in the very next verse, after verse 3, it says that they left that place that they had completely destroyed, and they set out to Mount Hor, taking the road to the Red Sea. Now, they weren't going to the Red Sea. They were just on the road that goes to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. But the people grew impatient with the long journey. So, of course, we remember that to go around the land of Edom, this was the route that they were trying to take here, to go around here. Okay. And of course, this is when they started complaining again, as they do. And Moses, and so God, gets upset with them again. and sends snakes to bite them. And then there was the test from last week. We had that test that they were tested in the wilderness with the snakes. And Moses put a bronze snake up um, on a pole, and they were told, okay, if you were bitten by a snake, come look at this bronze pole. And we all know that bronze is a symbol of sin. Go look at the pole, and then you'll be cured. Now, it's a little bit weird, and we now know that it was just a test of faith. And even Jesus in the New Testament referred to that incident as as an example of faith, saying, as the Son of Man was lifted up, so was it that the children of Israel needed to look up to that bronze snake in order to be healed. Okay? So this is the actual another map of just showing the possible routes they could have taken. And we know this area down here is Edom, and this is the area of Moab. And in the soundtrack for this week, we had already been told that God told them to leave the Moabites. Oh, I didn't have my screen share on. Let me show you the map I was talking about. Okay, right here. This is this map. This is just another way of seeing it. No, this is the Sea of Galilee. This is the Jordan River, and it flows through here, and this is the Dead Sea down here. Now, this is Edom, and this is Moab. God had already told them not to mess with the Moab, but the king of Moab didn't really know that. So this is a different map showing Moab is down here this time. Okay, so this is at the very top of where we were in the last map. And you remember when Moses died, right before Moses died, God showed him the promised land. And I thought this was a really good map that showed like how it would look. It looks really close. So this Mount Nebo right here is where Moses was taken to that mountain. And you can imagine the mountain being high enough that you can see over into the promised land from this very strategic point right here. And we know that this is the Jordan River flowing right here. And we know later on that when Joshua takes them through the Jordan River, and the Lord does a miracle again and parts the water so they can go across the Jordan, and the Jericho was the first town that they take over. Now we see here that Jericho is really, really close to the Jordan River. So this really brings that alive for us. Now, I also thought this was a good way to see the main road here. This one in red going through here. It says the main road, the so-called King's Highway. Main road. Mount Nebo was the lookout spot for Moses' final moments, and I just spoke about Joshua leading them over the Jordan to conquer Jericho. In Deuteronomy 34:1, it says that Moses went up to Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab. So Moab is down here. He went up to Mount Nebo and climbed Pisgah Peak, which is across from Jericho, and the Lord showed him the whole land from Gilead as far as Dan. And look, Gilead is up here. So these are some of the topics that was from this week. So we continue the story with Balak and Balaam. Of course, Balaam is the seer. He is the like the a pagan prophet that actually knows the God of Israel. And for 3 times here, he gives blessings when Balak wanted him to give curses. And in Numbers 26, we saw the census of the new generation. This is the second census, and we know that in that census, it was like 1,800 people less than it was the first census. The first census was like 600 thousand, and this census was less. But we have to remember that a lot of years have gone past now. Almost, the 38 years they've been wandering around. So all those people have died off, and this is a fresh new generation here that is being counted in this census. So that is in number 26. And then in these other chapters here, they actually talk about the daughters of Zelophehad is like the rule for a when a son, a ruler of a tribe, doesn't have any sons, and so how the land would be given to the daughters. And it talks about the daily offerings, the Sabbath, and the feasts, the offerings that should be given at the feast. Now, and there's even in chapter 32, where Reuben and Gad settle in Gilead because the people just wouldn't leave them alone, and they had to fight them anyway. And they took all of their land, and that wasn't even land. The land that the land that Reuben and Gad asked for, it was to the east of the Jordan. That wasn't even in the promised land. But when those kings heard about the Israelites, they were afraid and they came out to fight them. And that is why their land got stolen. That's why their land got taken from them, because they wanted to fight them. God had already told them to leave Moab alone, but they wanted to actually engage with them. And that's how Reuben and Gad ended up with land on the east side, because they went to Moses and was like, hey, this is pretty good land. We want to stay over here. We're going to go and help our brothers get their land on the other side of the Jordan, but we want to go ahead and set up camp on this side, even though that wasn't even in the original promise. Okay. And so the end of our soundtrack for Numbers was Numbers 36. That was the end of Numbers 36. That was the end of Numbers. And then we start into Deuteronomy. Now, we'll go back and talk about a few things about Balak and Balaam. Now, Balak was the king. He was actually afraid of the Israelites. So he went to Balaam, who was a pagan diviner. He was a seer, like a fortune teller. And he wanted him to curse the Israelites. So he sends some people and said, hey, we want to hire you to curse these people for us because they are, a really large group of people and we're afraid they're going to take us. Well, Balaam, went and told the guys, like, sleep here tonight. I'm going to go and see what the Lord says about it. Well, he comes back out and tells them that, hey, I can't go with you. The Lord told me, I can't go with you because these people cannot be cursed because they are blessed. And the people went away. So Balak heard about that. The king heard about that. And he sent another group of princes to Balaam and said, we're going to give you a whole lot of money and we really need for you to come and curse these people. Well, at that point, Balaam really could have said, what are y'all doing here? God already told me I can't go with you, and these people are blessed, so they can't be cursed. God had already blessed them. But that's not what he did. He said again, wait here. I'm going to go and see what God says. So that tells you right there that he really wanted that money, and he really wanted to figure out a way, either through, properly speaking to the Lord or through some of his divination, fortune telling, omen stuff, tricks that he had up his sleeve. But he really wanted to go. And so, the Lord knows that's where his heart was. And so he told him, okay, go ahead. But when they get on the road going there, that's when the angel with the drawn sword was standing in the way. The donkey saw the angel, but Balaam didn't see the angel. So Balaam is, beating the donkey, wanting him to go on. And finally, God speaks through the donkey, like a talking donkey. So wild. And says, look, do I usually behave this way? And the Bible says that God opened Balaam's eyes and he saw the angel standing there with the drawn sword. So the thing that is just so amazing here is Balaam goes, well, if you don't want me to go, then I can just go home. But then again, God knows our hearts. And Balaam's heart was to go and get that money. So he says, the angel says back, no, go ahead, go where you're going, but only say what I tell you to say. And so that was that. So the man takes him up to 3 different places. And he says to him, can you curse them from here? And then Balaam blesses them instead. And then he takes him to another place. Well, can you curse him from here? And again, he gives him a blessing 3 different times. And so you have to wonder, if I already told you the answer, why are we continuing to go back and forth with this? Well, what I discovered is it is rooted in a pagan belief that different gods, okay, first of all, they believe in many different gods. And many different gods have like territories. They have specific things that they can do and specific places that they have rule over, that they can do things in this one area, but they it's like territories, or that gods have territories. They believe that there were gods of the valleys, gods of the mountains, gods of rivers, gods of oceans, that they had different geographic areas where they could exercise their authority in one place better than they could in another place. So by taking Balaam to another mountain to see the camps of Israel So, remember, this is over 1 million people out in the desert. So they couldn't actually see the whole group. So from these different places, they could see pieces of them. And so Balaam figured that there would be a chance that there would be a different God ruling in that area, that he could get a different answer. And he always got the same answer, because the God of heaven had already said, these people are blessed. And that shows us the sovereignty of God as well, that there may be other gods, but he's the sovereign God. Okay, so I thought that was interesting, the different places that he took them. Okay. Okay, yeah. Oh, yep. I needed to see that. All right. Thank you, Kathleen. All right, so let's go on to the next one. Now, Balak and Balaam. Balaam knew the God of the Israelites. He was a diviner or a seer. And being a seer is like witchcraft. And it is defined as the practice of seeking knowledge of the future or the unknown by supernatural means or fortune telling. Now, what that says to me is Balaam actually had a gift. He had a gift of prophecy, but he was using that gift for unrighteous things, for money. People could just call him up and hire him to do stuff for them, like this King Balak was trying to do. And he was well known. He had to be well known because Balak said, I want you to come, because I know if you curse somebody, they're going to be cursed. And if you bless somebody, they're going to be blessed. So he had this reputation for being a very good seer, a very good diviner. And the word that just keeps coming to my head is witch, like witchcraft, putting roots on people, all that stuff. That he was one of those people, right? So he had that gift that he could use, right? So Reuben, Gad, and East Manasseh. A lot of times in the Bible, when you see that half tribe of Manasseh, what it's talking about is some of the tribe of Manasseh had land on this side. Okay, this right here running up right through here, this white area right here, we know that's the Dead Sea. So if that's the Dead Sea right here, this has to be the Sea of Galilee. And running between them, of course, is the Jordan. So the promised land was this side of the Jordan. But when those kings came out to fight them and they had to defend themselves, you remember when they traveled around Edom? Edom is down here in the bottom. When they traveled around Edom to get to Moab, and they even went further north than Moab, they conquered all of these lands because they came out to fight them, because the word had gotten out. The word had gotten out that the children of Israel are on the move. And they were afraid. They were afraid of them. One verse called them a horde, that they were just so large. And I imagine their attitudes at this point. They've been walking around in this desert, couldn't get the faith to go in and fight to get this land that God had promised them, the land of milk and honey, settled in one place, not moving around all the time. They probably were very frustrated people. And that frustration probably helped them in their fighting. because they were really, really, really into it and really riled up about it. So those attitudes probably helped them. So Balaam was well known. He was for hire. And just like we mentioned, the king believed that he had powers. So clearly he'd helped other people before. Now, you would think that that was the end of the story, but this Balaam is mentioned in 2 Peter 2 and 15. So this is all the way in the New Testament. It says, which has forsaken the right way and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Besor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. So we don't learn about him really being in love with the money all the way until we get to 2 Peter. Now we do know in the story that he says, well, since obviously I can't curse them because I can only speak what God said to do. But then we learn later, he tells them, hey, look, you're not going to be able to get these people cursed because they're blessed. So what you can do, however, is get them to sin against God, and God will actually bring judgment on them. So you can't curse them from the sense of a spiritual realm because God had already blessed them. But what you can do is you can get them to sin. So he sent those women over there to sleep with them and to defile them and to get them to worshiping their other gods. And that's how they actually became under judgment because they were sinning. Now, look at this one. That wasn't the only place that Balaam is mentioned. I mean, he was mentioned in Numbers and in Deuteronomy and also in probably some other places that I'm not thinking of right now. But he was also mentioned in Revelation when Jesus was talking to the angel of the church of Pergamos. But I have a few complaints against you. You tolerate some among you whose teaching is like that of Balaam, who showed Balak, remember Balak is the king, showed Balak how to trip up the people of Israel. He taught them to sin by eating food offered to idols and by committing sexual sins. So what that tells me is if we are blessed, they were already blessed, but the things that we do can cause us to be separated from that blessing. All right. So this story of Balaam was very telling. And you know, in Second Peter here, when it says which have forsaken the right way and gone astray, Peter was talking about in that second chapter, he was talking about false teachers. That's what Peter was talking about. He was talking about false teachers. And so this story of Balaam and the talking donkey, we all remember that part, but I could see myself in that. God telling me to do something, but I'm really not crazy about doing it. So my heart is not towards God, and I want to go over here and do what I want to do. That was Balaam. You remember the king told him, I will make you rich. Whatever you tell me to do, I will do. Now that's something to be coming from a king to say, I really need these people to be cursed. So, just name your price. But somehow Balaam actually obeyed the Lord because he knew the God of Israel. In that passage where it says that the Lord has blessed them, the word used there is actually Yahweh. So it was the God of the God of Israel that was talking there. So that was what some of the things I went into. Good morning, Diane. Good morning. Good to see you. So those were some of the things I got into for this week. There's always so much, and there's always like this really struggle to figure out, what I'm actually going to put in here. But I did learn a lot. I didn't realize that Balaam was throughout how many times he was mentioned. Even in Micah, the prophet Micah mentions Balaam. So that idea, when something is mentioned that many times in scripture, that really makes me say, okay, there's something here I need to get for myself. So number one, have a relationship with God for myself so I can hear from the Lord. So I know when I am being taught well or not, and to watch my desires, to actually just watch myself so that I stay in the will of God. And it's hard because it's a constant fight with yourself, with myself. So that's what I have for today. I hope this was a blessing to you. Now next week there will be I will go ahead and put in the description on the YouTube video what the next sections are going to be. So some people are really liking that. So God bless you, and I hope you continue to have a good week. And like I always like to say, may the Lord watch between me and thee while we are absent one from another.